maintain the high standards that we and our customers are extremely happy. We just go about extending the household recover. So it's grown phenomenally well and it keeps posing new challenges. As you scale, it's a good problem to have, but we keep getting it. How can we make it better for our customers? How do we make it easier for our drivers and make sure it's worth their time that there is a
Can I ask which are the market types that you see in our own process?
Yeah, sure. We've taken a very cautious approach to make sure that we've gone to a lot of markets. We've expanded existing markets. We make sure that stores are like the center of the universe for us. So we expand along with our stores, but we have to keep in mind that the food safety standards, like we have to deliver groceries and let's say milk minutes before they expire. So that's one thing we keep in mind. It's a mix of both rural and urban markets, but I think some markets have grown better than others. For example, you cannot grow at the same speed in like heavy metros, heavy traffic. You can't expand it out to the north. Whereas that they can deliver within the food safety standard regulations, we've expanded into like low traffic. Better demand for.
For Ryan, like how have you seen the different types of goods that we deliver that have gone out, from groceries and drugs?
Yeah, so I think to add what we were saying, that's like our view is going to be a little bit more expanded into what we see in the restaurants as well. And I think everyone here understood the wave that took place during the pandemic, and I think there was a lot of headlines years after around maybe correction in delivery volume. But what we can see is that there's continued growth across all categories we look at, which are restaurants, grocery, and retail. Restaurant, I would say, is one of the more mature areas of growth and most established. I think it's happening before we even have a passport. We're using Grubhub to call orders on the phone and order as well. But I would say that what we've seen in our introduced state mobility report that's reflective of kind of the growth of last year in 2024. We've seen restaurants continue to grow. We've seen grocery continue to grow as more established categories. What's very interesting to see is the growth in retail. And I think as you look at a lot of the third-party delivery platforms out there, is like they see retail as kind of the next green pasture, the next horizon for growth. So retail being like a Best Buy or Bed Bath & Beyond or other stores alike. We saw that retail grew about 30% year over year just in 2024. We have legacy players like Macy's. This was really surprising to us, is that you saw them grow about 4,500% at scale. So we're not talking about little small numbers here. Through there with what they did to reinvest in their logistics with DoorDash Drive as well. So there's been a huge wave of growth in retail.
Just to add to that, I think we've seen the same kind of trend in how a lot. And I think it's through the flywheel of we now can reach 90% of households. And you can start seeing them for like a much faster rate. So that kind of makes off like, oh, order this is well, so we see a lot of growth in the market. One thing that I didn't kind of follow earlier was as we expand, I think there's a lot of focus on accessibility. Like we've grown up like all of these states where we accept like SNAP and EBT for our customers, rural customers. So there's a lot of focus on making sure that we just don't expand in a particular area. It has to be more inclusive and for our
Could you expand a little bit on just how the shift in consumer like value and labor habits are something effects on inflation just because this possibly?
Sure. Yeah, it hasn't been the last easy couple of years. Right? So with inflation, what Walmart's trying to do is kind of absorb some of the cost and make sure that the prices don't rise. And I mean, it's not how much we can do. And what we've seen at that is we've actually had like a phenomenal amount of growth in our customer orders. And that creates the need for more drivers that we have to get on the platform to active deliveries. So our stores and drivers have worked really hard to make sure that we're able to fulfill the demand. And they are like one of our.
So, this is another segue to talk about driver efficiency. You talked a bit about, there's now a explosion of apps and every driver is going to app. What are the platforms are doing to attract, get drivers to pick up the orders and to incentivize them so we can ensure good customer?
Yeah, that's a good problem to have. I mean, so we know our drivers money, right? So, and we actually agree with it. Not completely, but we know that. So our best effort is to make sure we're able to fulfill our customer orders and we have the right amount of supply that the drivers are able to take. One of the key things we've seen is respecting the driver's time and making sure that we are planning the trip correctly, asking them to come to our stores at the right time and keeping the dwell time very low. Those kind of things add a lot of value, and especially in markets where we started doing that very well. Drivers love those trips and they take it home. And also we come to terms with some kind of pattern that works for them. So they want to, let's say they want to drive between 12 and noon to 4. So they choose their hours, and I think we've gotten better with making sure that they're unproductive drive or what they think and just wasting their keeps going down.
What about for broader platforms like the small solutions?
Yeah, so I would say we work with a lot of companies in the industry to help them. I think first off, like baseline, what does efficiency look like, and what are the factors that are impacting it? How does it change by time of day? There's events, there's weather, things of that sort. And then even drilling down into, like as you talked about protecting the driver's time and think about efficiency, the pickup is like you're kind of relying on some of the merchants to make specific types of investments as well. Whether you guys can just do a full stack. But if I'm run a partner with a restaurant, I need to be able to understand that it's like the restaurant needs to invest in standardized parking or make sure that they have the right kind of alerts and systems and workflows set up that bring the order out on time and they minimize the dwell time. Because then you'll see a lot across a lot of restaurants in the country where someone may go to surprising like McDonald's and it's a fast food restaurant may take the longest period of time to bring the food to the driver. But then even as you revert over to the last 100 meters, there's a lot of challenges that are existing there for drivers today, which is also impacting the consumer experience. So you think about, you go in an urban area, parking, or going parking, and so standardizing parking is becoming very critical. How do I enter this building? Interpreting those instructions and the delivery instructions like the keypad and things of that sort. So I think you're seeing as more and more players are entering into the market, retail, we see restaurants, see grocery chains. They're entering and they're realizing it's something for us to ensure that consumer experience we need to have a driver experience and we need to be the right partners to work with as well. And then as everyone works together and makes those investments across the board, then you have a good experience everywhere.
Actually, I have some very good points. I think we think of efficiency. I think it all comes down to how do we best use the drivers. So if you start from drivers' entire journey, it starts from how do I plan my trips, how do I patch the orders together, how do I make sure that we are creating a proposition that works for us, the customer, and the driver. So making sure that the trip planning, the routing are really efficient makes the best use of time. And how do they spend the lowest amount of productive time? I think Ryan touched on the last 100 feet problem. If you don't have the right, let's say an apartment gate code instruction, or how do I get it to learn all apartments do the same, how do we make it easy for drivers? So that even at even if they've navigated 99% of the distance and they can't make it to the customer, that impacts the customer, the driver, and us. So how do we take on the complexity on behalf of the driver, work with the customer to make sure that they have the right access? So I think if you look through the driver journey, there are multiple areas that we can optimize and make better efficiency.
What are some of the ways to collect that feedback and detect those efficiencies?
Wow, that's a great question. So, and I know I keep
Start, where the comes in.
is there is a feedback loop that we can actually work with. There's a driver feedback loop that we have. When they say, yeah, I couldn't get it, or I can't find it, it's like an empty barren line, something like that. Or when we see this happen a few times, we reach out to the customer for their next order and say, hey, it looks like there might have been a problem. They'll be fine. You want to add a date for it. These are things that you can see on the Walmart experience today. We probably want. What we do is we collect feedback on both sides and try to make sure that we fill the blanks for the customer and the driver.
I can add to that. Is like, I wouldn't say that we're as focused on collecting feedback on the or delivery experience, but I would say that what we do is we see it from a more quantitative approach, and just being able to measure what is like the pickup efficiency and the drop-off efficiency look like at every single drop-off. So what we look at, and a lot of others in the industry look at, is okay, when someone requests or accepts an order to go pick it up from a restaurant or retailer, etc., how long is it? What is that average time? And then once they get there, it's like, what is that average dwell time? And how does that change across different merchants in the category? We see like alcohol and we see other categories, auto body shops or things like that, or auto repair parts. It's like they have fastest dwell times. We see that like 3 minutes for the driver because of the type of inventory and then the inventory picking up. On the pickup side, or the drop-off, we actually see that that's where you see this most amount of chaos going on. If you visualize this, you can just see someone just trying to go around and we're building the entire and maybe just stop and the order just drop outside somewhere for the consumer. So like we're actually able to kind of see that journey on the pickup and the drop-off, and then figure out how do we make this more efficient and fit their experience for our users, drivers, and for consumers as well.
I was just curious and talk a bit about Thomas and Lucas model, so I'm going to get this here. And for Walmart, like how are you seeing that play into this whole workflow? What are some of the experiments that you've been doing?
So, I'm not entirely the right person to answer that, but I can tell you about there are different order profiles that work well for Spark network, for the drones network, and recently this topic that we finished 100,000 calories on drone. Right? So it's a particular order profile that really gels well with drones. And I think we've been experimenting in that space. That I don't have a lot of information, but to me, always it's like when you start with autonomous like drones, I think you start unlocking a new order profile that was earlier on. So it is always additive in nature. It's not like for all of us, you don't know if you want to order from drones here, you know that you can't get everything you can get through a Spark or everything. So there are some limitations. So it just acts as additive orders.
And for Curbivore, so what's the opportunity for you to see or share partner with other players to help develop their autonomous solutions?
Well, I would say that what we see is like we're like a lot of people I think think that autonomous vehicles are coming to market and actually like they're windows out in the markets and it's thinking all the driver jobs right now. And I think I've talked to a few people here today and there's like most of like there's actually not changing at all right now. I think that the way we view it, the trends that we see in talking to others in the market, is that you see like a pretty nice hybrid market for the next 10 to 15 years. Even though we see that these companies are expanding pretty aggressively, especially in the rideshare side. The way that we measure that, the way that we help companies like understand what is the impact to like autonomous vehicle companies rolling out right now, is we look at we're looking at a normalized index of trips per driver over time, which we see, we look at when did Waymo enter the market, when did Cruise enter, when they were still operating, and we can see like, okay, how is that trend? Is it changing much at all? No, actually it's not. What about trips per hour per driver, which is more of a measure of liquidity in the marketplace? We can see that trips per hour per driver, which is like how many, what is the throughput for each driver, how many trips they have their disposal to complete in an hour. That's been declining since like well into 2023 in like markets like California. flew to San Diego, flew to San Francisco, flew to LA, is before Waymo even entered the markets, that has been on fire. Why? It's because the markets are oversupplied right now from a driver standpoint. And so we see that as the cost of living and the cost of living has increased. We've seen more and more people flock to Uber because of that. The available work for everybody in the market has declined. And so I think that there's, as we look at this from an autonomous standpoint, it's like there's a lot of different use cases of the rise that humans just think better suited to solve for. But I think the mix of the two types of drivers is going to be, is going to, anything, I think, expand the market and expand the opportunity for both humans and autonomous.
There's one thing that I can talk about is customer acquisition is a hard problem. Right? For Waymo to acquire just as many customers, Uber, be that comfortable, that trust, that it takes a lot of time. Like you said, I think at the end of the day, it's going to be natural force.
The other thing about autonomous is that it's very hyper-local, very understanding of the market. And what did you restrict to that? And so, is there, like, can you share a use case of where, companies can directly influence your pricing strategy and hyper-local sense?
Not so much pricing, but like Walmart, Walmart itself is very hyper-local. You have a lot of stores. Our last month delivery is based out of stores. So we can look at how we plan trips in areas where there's very high traffic. Our goal is to make sure that the driver is set up for success and delivers for the customer. Right? So there are different ways, number of items all along the trip is. We make sure that we use historical and some dynamic data that we get in terms of weather and traffic to make sure that we use a very hyper-local strategy to create trips and execute trips that helps our drivers meet the customer's demand and promise and make sure that they're very engaged and they're happy with it.
There are other examples of how drivers have experienced with the promise of customers and what autonomous vehicles companies have been working on.
Say what, sorry.
Like how other new examples to share, like how differently drivers experience the housing economics of different cities and autonomous vehicles can learn from that.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to learn about kind of pricing today, but it looks like the market now is trending. I mean, to summarize this, I mean, as we see prices have continued to rise over the past few years. 2024, we saw a 17% increase in pricing on rideshare services like Uber and LYFT. When you look at pricing, if you're an autonomous vehicle operator, if you're another type of operator, it's important to be able to baseline what the today's market looks like, but how, what I was talking about earlier, all these factors like time of day, weather, day of week, different cities impact how pricing works. And so I think that in the report that we partnered with S&P Global on is like we spoke about how mass adoption of autonomous vehicles or just like growth of the market is going to come from the price being able to get down to $1 per mile. Where are we at today? The average is about $2.84 nationwide per mile on rideshare. What you see is in cities, there's different cities like Seattle, where that actually goes up to about $5.50 and in the afternoon of the day. So you see like throughout different times of the day, the price per mile is going to vary. And so I think like what you have to do as a mobility operator is get down to the very granular understanding of like each region of the city, start to zone it out and understand at different points in time of the day, where, based off of where people are coming from and going to, is like, how does pricing change? And then how does that inform on what willingness to pay is and what your pricing model will do?
To wrap up, I'd love to get your thoughts on, what should people take away, as platforms and retailers and cities come along together, what should they think about in terms of preparing for the next few years?
Sticking with the theme of data on-demand delivery, I would say 3 to 5 years is my personal opinion that today we use a lot of it to optimize and
by data. We didn't know that existed. Some of the unsupervised learning that we do, there might be customer propositions that might start becoming available that we were never aware of. So that's what I am most looking forward to, and I think that's the problem.
Yeah, I would say in terms of, we have to reach and we have to look forward to.
Yeah, what will you keep in mind for us? These entities like platforms and entities involved in the community.
Yeah, I mean, and I think over the next few years, like what we need to solve for is, I think what's required over the next few years is a major amount of investment in infrastructure that is impacting how people or goods are moving from point A to point B. And so I think that a lot of this is going to come back to, like, yes, it's more like Walmart marketing, a lot of different things to influence efficiencies of the pick up and drop off. But a lot of it also requires cities to standardize pick up and drop off areas and use different types of data sources to inform. And how do we create a better operating zone for delivery drivers to come in and actually pick up from different parts of the city based off of where the delivery demand is happening? How do we, if autonomous vehicles are operating in the city, how do we create areas where there's staging in particular areas and not increasing congestion, or rideshare vehicles that are waiting for someone else, which has been happening for years, inducing congestion because they're just kind of sitting at the wheel and don't have the right place to park. And so I think there's a point in catch-up that the infrastructure has to play as a lot of the private sector stakeholders continue to make investments, whether that's at the commercial level or at the big platform level, as you guys are doing that.
I think that's all the time we have, but it's a pleasure to speak with you two, and thank you for having us.